Well, there you are. Again, Charlie Greer podcast today. So, secret agent Charles Manson, question mark. Perhaps, perhaps he was. Before we start, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to support the channel, the information is in the description for my Cash App. My Cash App handle is Charlie Greer Podcast. All together, Charlie Greer Podcast. Cash App. Let's do that. So, right off the bat, got to credit Tom O'Neill. He wrote a book called Chaos. It's about Charles Manson, CIA, all this stuff. He has this theory. He's did 20 years research. The book started as an assignment for a magazine. Then he started going down that rabbit hole and deep diving. He's like, wait a minute, and it's a thing. You look it up. And also, full disclosure, I haven't read all of Chaos. Okay, I've just read bits and pieces online. Watched a ton of his interviews. I do want to get the book. I am going to get who's it. So, and I'm also going to tell my I met some of the hangers-on of the family back in the day. So anyway, Tom O'Neill has this theory that somehow Charles Manson, of the Manson family, was somehow in this secret program. Now, granted, they're not going up to Charles Manson going, "Hey, you want to be a special agent?" No, he didn't know. He was sheeped it. Bamboozled. The best spies are ones that don't know they're spies. The best agents are the ones that don't know they're agents. This is the intelligence world. That's what they do. So, Tom O'Neill wrote Chaos. He's after doing all this investigation, 20 years or more, and talking with, he got people that would never talk. He got them to talk. He's under the idea of Charles Manson was in this program that he might not even have known about what was going on. And there's things that Tom said in the book. Well, again, I haven't read all the book, but it's strange about Charles Manson. Like even his crime, like he spent most of his life in jail. And then you look at him, they were all petty crimes that but were federal. So I had to do federal time. And then he was let out, all these petty little things, and even Charles Manson said one of his crimes back in the 40s or 50s was hey, go across the state, pick up this gun for me, come back. Well, it was a federal crime. You can't do that, And then he was, and I don't know if people know this, but before he did the Manson murders, was let out in the 60s. I think he was let out in 67. And then he was arrested in 69. So in those 2 years, he did all that chaos, if you will. But even in the 50s, he ran a modeling agency, which was a cover for hookers, basically, women of the night. And I've told this story before. An old friend of mine rented this apartment on Franklin. Turned out this was the apartment that Charles Manson ran his agency out of. He didn't know he lived in Charles Manson's old apartment, and that address is published in every Manson book, and people would be throwing rocks at the windows and climbing up the wall trying to get in there. He ended up, I think, dating one of these Charles Manson groupie. Anyway, my friend. Anyway, so Manson was running this agency in the 50s, a modeling agency, if you will, under that guise. And it was hookers. Also, it gets weird with Charlie Manson, man. Again, I'm sure Tom O'Neill was pulling his hair out by the time. Because what I've not researched but read, I was a Manson aficionado, meaning I read all the books. I love true crime. That Manson, and this is crazy. And this is before he had long hair. This is in the 50s when he, he had short hair and wore suits and stuff. He's still a criminal, I guess a master criminal. But he would host underground poker games at Elvis's estate in Beverly Hills. Multiple sources have said that, that's just weird. There's so many weird things about Manson that maybe it is, so Tom O'Neill said that there were a secret program to try to manipulate and brainwash these inmates, federal inmates. And the strange thing is, like, there's supposedly the people that were in this secret program ended up being like criminals and serial killers. Charles Manson, Whitey Bulger was supposedly also in this secret program. Again, they're not going to come up to the, hey, by the way, Whitey, we want to, turn you into a Manchurian candidate. They're not going to do that. They're just going to like, hey, you want some time off? You want, hey, we're doing this study. They might even do that. They just might, again, if you're in jail, you're locked down. There's really nothing you can, and even back then, you know what I mean? Like you can't like call the police when you're in jail. Again, speculation, assumption, but the strange stuff surrounding this Manson case, I mean, it's just mind-boggling. The gun that was used the night of the Tate and the LaBianca murder. So they were done one, and the next night they went to LaBianca. So they went to Sharon Tate's place. Roman Polanski, who went there, then to the LaBiancas. The gun that was used in these murders, because most of them were stabbing, but they used the gun. Registered, came back, Ronald Reagan's gun. So in court and everything, that well, what happened was he had given it as a birthday gift to one of his stuntmen. And then later on in life, the stuntman was living at the ranch, because a lot of people lived at the ranch, and it was a working ranch. You could go rent horses there, the Manson family ranch, which was also, it was the Spawn Ranch, used in Westerns and all this stuff. So the story was, it was Ronald Reagan's gun. He gifted it to a stuntman. The stuntman lived at the Spawn Ranch, which is true. And then the Manson family stole the gun from the stuntman. Now, that's a lot to wrap your head around. Perhaps that's what happened, but a gun, you never hear about this. But if you look at the court proceedings and you read the book, this is what happened. Ronald Reagan's gun. He was the governor of California. It's another strange thing. Before he was also the head of the Screen Actors Guild for a while. Anywho's it. Another strange thing. So they used Ronald Reagan's gun. Whether he hadn't owned it or not, who knows? So they got, the Manson trial. They all got the death penalty. And then later on, Ronald Reagan, the California, kicked it down to life. It's just like, what? Like, there's this weird stuff. There's been rumors about like even Ronald Reagan and this, that, and the other, but it seems like it's like this weird spider web, Rubik's cube of strangeness that kind of hard to wrap your mind around. Hello, Tina. So Tom O'Neill wrote the book Chaos. He claims that Manson, and not just Manson, were doing this under the, working through this program. They didn't know it. They might have been sheep dipped. And the guy running the program, God, what was his name? He had such a strange name. Anyway, dear God, what was his name? So anyway, he worked at this clinic in San Francisco where Manson would take his followers when they were in San Francisco. And, I guess they got a lot of STDs and stuff. It's the 60s, free love, And his parole officer would, Jolly West, his parole officer and this doctor, whatever, would meet with Manson. And then Manson was supposed to stay around San Francisco. He was on parole, not probation, parole. And he was supposed to meet, like, I don't know, every week or something. You got to keep, shit. Well, now he ends up, there's also stories of like all of a sudden he's got a credit card. And back then credit cards were kind of rare. He has a bus. He somehow got a bus, like an old school bus, and all these girls, and then he goes down to LA. Right there, parole violation. And then he was arrested in Los Angeles before these murders dozens of times. I mean, for everything under the sun, he was never picked up. Huh? What? It's almost like they wanted him out on the street. It's strange. They'll find prime time. Surprise me with a Big Mac, a Whopper, or whatever. What do you think's better, Big Mac or Whopper? I kind of go. I've been tilting with the Whopper. I don't eat a lot of fast food, but I like a Whopper and a Big Mac. Uh, I might be leaning towards Whoppers nowadays, but I haven't had one in a while. I might have to go get a Whopper. So he's in L.A. Charles Manson was a musician. The family, they had a group. I mean, he was writing songs. He wrote a song for the Beach Boys. It's not credited. And that's one of the things they think that why he went. He was looking for, he got ripped off. They wrote Never Learn to Love Again, I think that was on one of the Beach Boys albums. So he was the talk of the town as far as the music industry. Charles Manson was a great guitarist, singer. I know it sounds crazy. He was. Um, and he recorded with the Beach Boys. Matter of fact, there's an unreleased album produced by Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys that's never seen the light of day. Also, there's an album that was Neil Young took Manson around before the murders and was shopping him. And supposedly he recorded an album with Reprise Records, which is a subsidiary of like Warner Brothers. And that'll never see the light of day. And he was, granted, these same people were like, well, look, he was crazy. I mean, come on, he's Charles Manson, Can you imagine? Go, hey, he's going to be the next star, Charlie Manson. There was supposed to be, before these murders, it was already set in motion. I forgot what label, but it was called the Family Jams. That was the group, Manson and some of the girls. And you can listen to a reenactment, meaning they recorded and another guy came in and recorded Charlie's vocals because Charlie's like in jail. But I gotta admit, it's not that bad. I mean, it's hippie, and kind of, and the people that were at the Spawn Ranch, they had a thing. You could go and party at the Spawn Ranch, like the summer of like 67, 68. By the summer of 69, that's when all the creepiness come, he's robbing people and again, getting away with it, getting arrested, then being let go. That's strange right there. Like you're on parole and you're like a long time, inmate. And the people that he was, okay, so he was cellies. Your cellies, when you're in prison, they room you up. It's two in a cell. He was cellmates of Frank Costello. Frank Costello was a major mob head. That just doesn't happen, man. You just don't. Oh, and then before that, he was the cellie of Creepy Carpus. Creepy Carpus was a mobster guy, and that's who taught him how to play guitar, was Creepy Carpus. Supposedly Creepy Carpus was like the Van Halen in his day or something. Al Capone was an excellent guitar player. He could play guitar, he could play mandolin, he could play whatever. There's a saying that like there wasn't a song that Al Capone couldn't play. Just wrap your mind around that. Like when he wasn't doing crime, I guess, when he was just hanging out with girls and drinking whatever, he was on his guitar, acoustic guitar. But there's pictures of Al Capone in his cell sitting there with like his guitar. Like, what? You don't ever hear this. And I know people have hobbies, but it's just strange. I wouldn't think of Al Capone being like, the Jimmy Page or whatever it is, So Tom O'Neill, go read Chaos. Go watch an interview with Tom O'Neill. One of the good ones is on Joe Rogan. He did a few others, but he was on Joe Rogan talking about this. And also, he's holding back a few things as well. There's probably going to be a second book. Again, I need to read the whole book. I pretty much read most of it online, but it is blow your mind. How many people were in Charles Manson's circle? He lived with Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys. That's what they were all shacked up, and all the girls. And Dennis Wilson had like this mansion in Beverly Hills, and this is before all the real craziness kicked in. And supposedly Charlie wrecked one of his Rolls Royces, so he kicked him out, and that's why supposedly when they covered one of Charlie Manson's songs, they didn't pay him because he owed Dennis like a ton of money. And I heard it destroyed the house. It's the 60s. They're partying, It's just strange. It is just strange. And I have kind of a story to tell. And I've told this on a previous podcast, but I have a connection with the family, even though minute. I was living in Reseda, California, which is like pretty deep in the valley. It's past the 405. I mean, you're way past like North Hollywood, Van Nuys. You're in, Um, and so I lived in Reseda on Sherman Way, and I had two roommates. It was a 3-level condo. I rented the bottom level, and so my friends that like were, there was the landlord. She was super cool. She also was the owner of the henna tattoo company that I work for. Super cool person. And then my friend, he was a graphic design guy. He's done tons of albums. Anyway, so we would go to this down on Sherman Way, this smoke shop called the Lion's Lair. And at the time, it was like the oldest head shop, smoke shop in LA. Now it's been bought, and God know, the original owner had it forever. Then he sold it, and then it got taken. I don't even know if it's still there yet. But so I would go there. We would go there probably once a week to get our cigarettes, our rolling papers. At the time, I smoked herb, pipes, whatever and it had like a little. When you first went in, there was like a little section of like cool T-shirts. I bought T-shirts there. I got to know the people. I got to know the owner's daughter, and I got to know people that work there. And so our thing to do was on Sundays. We'd go once a week on a Sunday, and we'd go stock up on our cigarettes and God knows what else. And they carried like cigarettes you can't get in stores, like Gitans. They're French cigarettes. They come in a box, and they're strong. I mean, these French cigarettes, my God. But I'd want, I like to dip my beak, and so I'd have like multiple packs here and there, a pack of menthols, a pack of Gitans, a pack of oh man, they were even back now they're so expensive. Say like back then cigarettes were like $3 or $4 a pack. These would be like $10 to $12 a pack, and I would grab them. Let's see, kick the kid. I'll take a Whopper 2, please. Hello, how you doing, kid? Handsome devil, perhaps. Yeah, as far as like, I don't eat fast food that much. Every once in a while I go, well, I want, and it always, like I went to White Castle not too long ago, and it was a nice White Castle. A lot of those White Castles can be, you got to watch out. So went in there, and I didn't know. I was like, well, I don't know how much, like, because I have a bad stomach as well. So I went in there and I got 3 of the regular, just the hamburgers, no cheese, just 3 of those. They're pricey now. They're like $1 a piece. What? They used to be able to, you could be able to get like 10 of them for like $5. Anyway, I got 3, and I sat down to eat them. And at the time I was like, wow, this is great. I'm coming back. This might be like my, new thing to do every once in a while. No, later on, it was just, oh my God, I thought it was going to get horrible. So back to the story. I would go every Sunday with my 2 roommates, and we made it a thing. On Sunday, everybody had off, and we would just like, eat food, this, that, and the other. It was a cool time. This is in 2003. My book had just came out, So every week, and we'd go there and we'd hang out. We talked. We got friendly with the owners of the owner's daughter and the people that work there. So after about maybe 6 months, a year, this or something, because it was our thing to do. We were like our routine. They asked me like, hey, would you like to, and I'm getting to the Manson thing. Would you like to, we work, once a week. We need somebody for like maybe on Saturdays. It'll help pay for your cigarettes or whatever, and you get a discount. I was like, yeah, I could do that. It's right down the street. I lived on Sherman Way. It was like maybe a mile or 2 down the road. So I started doing, I only did it once a week, the first week. And then people work in smoke shops, these younger kids, they would have, most of them were in bands. Most of them like to party. They wouldn't show up. Within a week, I'm full time. Within a month, I'm the manager. Like I'm managing this place. I'm like doing the schedule, ordering the stuff. Pardon me, like just dropped right into it. And I liked it. I did it for a year. So one of the times I just became the manager, and they were training me on like who we buy from. And most of the things we buy from were these, they look like a phone book. These companies You could literally buy everything, adult items, head shop stuff, t-shirt, everything. And I'd call them up. I would, hey, that's it. See, fill out the bill or fax it, whatever I did. And so one of the vendors that we used, the owner, strange thing, I worked for a year, only met the owner twice, but I talked to him like 10 times a day on the phone. He called me when I first started and was like, hey, our old school stuff like bamboo pipes and all the old school brass bowl, like stuff that a lot of people honestly didn't like. They like the new blown glass, artsy kind of uh, Pyrex, all that new shit. But he was like the old school stuff I've been buying for decades from the family. And I'm like, the family? What family? He's like, oh no, the Manson family. I'm like, aren't they all dead? He's like, no, they've been they I've been buying for decades. They we get our colored hemp string, so people could put in their hair, and all the bamboo stuff and all these weird like old school head shop shit. Walnut bowls they'd make, like to break up their whatever. And I was like, really? He goes, yeah. Only spend about $100, $200. Make sure that they don't stay all night because they'll just come in and take and take up shop. They just um, keep them in the office, And so I was not scared, but I was like, what the fuck? He's like, oh yeah, they. Not all of them were crazy. Not all of them were in like there was in the inner circle, and then there was hangers on and people and they lived at the Spawn Ranch. There was a bunch of people that lived out there even before Manson. That's how he knew about it. It was a hippie compound kind of thing. After the Spawn Ranch, owned by George Spawn, I think his name was the old man. It had been used in westerns, and again, it was still an operating horse. You could rent horses, and there was trails, and it was a thing. So there was different groups at the Spawn Ranch, and some of them became Manson So he wouldn't tell me much. He just said that I was like, I thought they'd be like, how old are they? He's like, well, a lot of them were young back then. They were runaways. They were like, again, this is the 60s. They're like 15, 16. Nobody gave a damn. They were just, it's hippie, free love. So they call and they're like, yeah, we heard from so-and-so. We're going to come in. What time? I go, yeah, let's come in the evening when it's kind of slow down. Bring your stuff. So they show up, and there was like 4 of them. And they had suitcases, like these old suitcases. And sure enough, I turned my back to do something. They went like literally out in the front where we have like the counters and got on the floor and started spreading stuff out. I'm like, hey, we have a customer. You can't. The owner was right. They would just drop right into they're all hippie. Yeah, it's like patchouli. And now we got to go in the office. And honestly, it took forever to deal with them. They were telling yarns and this, that, and the other. And I was surprised that they were I was in my 30s, maybe. I was like, and they were maybe like 15 years older than me. They weren't, I'm probably older than they were then. Like some of them, like the one guy had been like 14, 15, 16 when he was there. The other one was like 18, 19, and they were older. So some of them were they were literally like that, not that much older than me. So I was like 32, maybe 33. They were like 45, 46. Some of them were, so the other one, there was 2 that were younger in their 40s, not that much older than me. And then the other 2 were kind of older, like 50s, 60s. And I asked them, and they're like, oh yeah, it was just a party. Charlie, he was, set up, blah, blah, blah. They, and they were kind of fringy types. But so I would keep them in the office, but I had to go out and do things. The phone would ring or whatever. I had to go in the front and deal with, or a customer wanted to see. I had the keys to the cabinets, and so I would leave, come back. Now they never told me this, and when I heard this from them. They were talking amongst themselves, and the door was cracked. And if I heard, I'd stand there, I'd open the door, and they'd quit talking. So they didn't tell me this directly. But what I learned from them was it was a crime within a crime. Something that had to do with the landlord of that property who was involved in some higher up kind of stuff. That's what they were saying. They didn't ever come out and tell me this. They said it's something had to do with also. So there was a guy there, Stephen Parent, a kid that happened to be at the Tate house that night visiting, because there was two houses at the Tate murders. It was a house, the main house, and the pool house. Well, the first one killed. It was a kid supposedly went to the pool house to sell a clock or something, and when he was leaving, they shot him first, and then went in and did everything else. They were saying that, like, I heard them over say that if they can put their head around, these investigators, and put two and two together about why that kid parent was there and the landlord of the whole place or whatever, that is the key to open up the rest of the crime. That's what I overheard them saying. Overheard them saying multiple times. They would say something like, yeah, well, poor kid, but he shouldn't have been wrapped up with it. He saw too much. I mean, or heard too much, I don't. And I did try to ask them, and then they're like, are you listening to your, you know what I mean? They're hippies are kind of secretive, and I'd say, what were you guys talking about? No, they clammed up. I never could get them to spill the beans, so to speak. And of course, I'd buy $100, $200 of all these, bamboo pipes. And honestly, they didn't sell that well, but there was a certain clientele that came in, customers that liked that old school stuff, like that old hippie bamboo, pipes. They didn't like glass, because glass will break, and I don't care if it's Pyrex or whatever. It's still, you got to clean it out, all this stuff. And I would get my screens from them. You used to have to put a screen in the pipe, like old school. And they gave me things. They gave me such items in like little one-hitter boxes that they would carve, and they were cool. I mean, they again, there was something creepy about them. They all lived in a duplex, and there was more of them supposedly. And what they did tell me was, yeah, we were at the Spawn Ranch. It was a magical time. We'd sit around the fire and play, and they had an illegal coffee shop, which was called Helter Skelter. All right. And then that got raided. You can't have a business selling food and coffee and God knows what else without a license. And they did that. I mean, the cops went down there and just strange things that. So I finally got the owner to open up, and he was like, yeah, man, we would go down there in the late 60s on a weekend night. And man, he said you could smell the weed when you're coming up. And this is what he told me. Like, if I ever wanted to get laid, I'd go out down to the Spawn Ranch. And then his friend, this old actor guy who started working part-time there, he said the same thing. He was like, damn, man, when that shit went down, it was a drag, because it kind of like stopped he would say he'd go there on the weekends. For a while, go there every weekend. And you could drink and get high and not have to spend any money. And there's all these girls, and you'd see celebrities. He said he saw people there. Again, secondhand knowledge. This is, I don't know. This is what I was told. And then I quit working there because some shit went down. But there are strange things going on with this case. Well, it's not even a case anymore. It's shut. I mean, they're not gonna. Most of them are dead. Manson's dead. Some of the girls are dead. I think Tex Watson. This is another thing. It's not really the Charles Manson murders. It's the Tex Watson murders. Charles Tex Watson. To Charlie. Can you imagine? To Charles is doing it. Most of those murders were done with Tex Watson. And then there were some of the girls said, yeah, we did them. But later on, Tex admitted he became like a preacher and in jail. And he admitted he did all that. Charlie wasn't even at the night of the Tate murders. He wasn't even there. But he supposedly brainwashed them and sent them there. Like, how do you do that? Hey, by the way, you owe me a favor. Go kill all these celebrities. And then the next night they said that they picked right out of the blue the LaBiancas. Come on. And there's, in the book Chaos with Tom O'Neill, he talks about how the LaBiancas ran a grocery store that was kind of a front for other criminal activity. Again, assumption, speculation. Who knows? Will we ever know? Kid, you believe in magic? Perhaps. I've seen some strange stuff. I've seen some strange. I met some crazy people. Uh, I met some. Yeah, I don't know. But what's even worse is people that believe in magic. It doesn't matter if it's real or not. If somebody believes it and think they can do something or out of their mind, sociopath, psychopath, what doesn't matter if magic's, they do their own black magic. Who needs black magic when you got some psychopath, you know? I think that there's more to this. I think Tom O'Neill is spot on certain things. He says that some people are willing to talk. They're just waiting until they get older. I mean, how old are you going to be? I mean, how, huh? It was before I was even born. And they're scared to talk. The last thing I actually watched was Jace Sebring. He was one of the victims, and he used to date Sharon Tate. He happened to be there that night. He got caught up in they murdered him, and he was a famous hairdresser. He cut hair for everybody, man. Elvis, Sinatra. He had his own shop in Hollywood. He had his own system. He was doing franchises of his thing. Supposedly he also had a cover for. He had a cocaine business. I don't know, and that's what they said in chaos. Anyway, this last documentary I watched about him was that supposedly Sharon Tate, who was pregnant when she was murdered, it wasn't Roman Polanski's baby. It was dudes. Like, what? See, that adds another kind of. It was Jay Sebring's baby, and they had dated before she married Roman. And Roman Polanski was not there that night. He was in Europe doing some kind of movie or something. Strange. So in this documentary, I forgot the name of the documentary. You can Google or YouTube Jay Sebring. It's like the latest one, came out like last year or two. And these lawyers are speaking now. And they said, yeah, they were about to file divorce papers. Sharon Tate was with Roman, and she was pregnant by Jay Sebring. I don't know. I mean, there's just so much weird. Crime is weird. Crime is strange. What these Manson people, what I heard, they saying that it was a crime within a crime, and it had more involved with, the kid there, this Parent kid, Stephen Parent, and then the landlord, I think Rudy Altabelli, I think his name was. There was other things. It had been going on for a long time. And there's a lot of celebrities that lived at that Cielo Drive house where the Tates were murdered. It had been everybody, all these celebrities had lived there over the years, over the decades. And another strange thing about the Tate murders, Sharon Tate and Jay Sebring and whoever else was there. Abigail Folger, who was the heir to Folger's Coffee. I'm talking about one of the richest, powerful. Someone had climbed the poles and cut the wires. That seems like some kind of. Would hippies know how to know exactly which wires to cut and know how to, not the lights, but the phone and I don't know. It seems strange. That seems like some kind of hit. Maybe they were Manchurian candidates and you use hippies to cover it. Who knows? But that did change things. That was the end of the hippie, the summer of love. Goodbye. Never to be seen again. And also the people that were supposed to be there that night, because it wasn't a huge party, but it was going to be like a little get together, Steve McQueen supposedly was supposed to be there. Mama Cass. There's rumors that Mama Cass actually showed up late and stumbled upon the scene and then ran crazy, scared when she saw what was going on, because they saw bloody footprints that they could never figure out who, what, where. Rick James, believe it or not, super freak dude. He was supposed to be there that night. And it's weird how these little things happen where they didn't show up, like, oh, I was hungover, or oh, I got this, or a girl came by that I wanted to talk, and then they just ended up not going. Just like fate. Just, will we ever know? I don't know. Perhaps we will. What do you think? Comment below. Have you read Chaos by Tom O'Neill? I suggest you do. I need to read the rest of it. I will. And again, this is just my take, my humble opinion, my assumption, my speculation on information that I've read or watched, or again, I'm parroting a lot of. I'm like a parrot. So I'm not and there's other people out there that have. Again, check out Tom O'Neill. He's kind of the new jefe on the case, because every like 5 or 10 years, somebody comes out about every kind of Jack the Ripper, Zodiac. There's a new guy, and I've studied this, and I know, So Quincy Jones was supposed to be there. I think he was. There was all these people that were like, half of them showed up and half of them didn't. Thank God they didn't. Can you imagine? Woke up the next day like, damn, yeah, I should have went, man, I missed out. And what the heck? Possible dope deal? Perhaps. But this is not street level stuff. This is more celebrities, I've known dudes that just sold to celebrities. Okay, running the streets of Hollywood, you run into motherfuckers, and that's what they do. They're not going to sell to even me. They would like, oh no, and I believe me when I tell you there are. I was asked back in the day to like, hey man, I can't really get into this story, but they asked me if I wanted to live on the cheap in this nice Hollywood house right off Sunset, not a mansion, but a damn near, And I was like, why is nobody living there? And they were, oh, we have a construction company, this, that, and the other. We just want to make sure that, people aren't going to squat there. We'll give you cheap rent. I was about to do it. And then somebody pulled me aside. I was like, dude, it's a safe house. And I was like, what? And it turned out it was. They were doing, again, celebrity drug stuff. I didn't know. I thought they were a construction company. Who knows, And I kind of confronted them about it, but I can't say too much because I don't want to be, because these people own a construction company and a porn company. They would do construction for porn. And I just, so I didn't do it. Good thing I didn't. Shit. But I was like, wow, I've lucked out, because you meet people, and that's how I would get places. Maybe I have lived in, I didn't know, Kid says Manson may have been jaded. He wasn't made famous and got revenge on the people he perceived wronged him, which were dope dealers and pimps, etc. In my opinion, could be. See, it could be all that. It could be a tentacle of, he did shoot a pimp. What was his name? Big Papa or something. He did. That's the thing. Charles Manson was a pimp. That's what he was in jail for before shit. He had that agency that was, modeling agency or acting at, who knows? And then that's what they were, again, there's probably, it's like an onion. There's layers of crime. Is like that. I mean, especially when you get to higher level crime, we're not talking about street people. We're talking about people that are connected to movie studios, record labels, real estate companies. See, people don't even realize about real estate companies and law firms. Man, they're all, not all of them, but if you want to cover certain things, well, that's what you do. I mean, that's as old as time. But what do you think? I think something is afoot. I think that Buddy Rich, Terry Melcher, and the Beach Boys was yeah. He was supposed to he'd already recorded an album. He had recorded with Brian Wilson. Supposedly, Brian Wilson's, he built his house. He had this like awesome studio in the house. One of the only people to ever record there was Manson, Charlie Manson. And people were like, he's going to be the next star. It's hard to wrap my head around, like, huh, what? You don't really hear that angle. And supposedly he was looking for Terry Melcher, who was Doris Day's son. He used to live at the Cielo house with, what was that actress's name? Anyway, all kinds of people had lived at that house. I'm talking about from like the 40s on or whatever. That was a thing. And it was also known as a party house. Even before they, it's up in the hills. You can, it's awesome. There's a pool. You can see like the curve of the earth and all the lights at night, the city light. Yeah. Yeah. It was a known kind of, there's a lot of places like that. Thousands of mansions that are just known for over the decades. These celebrities like to party. And they're kind of protected. If you're making a lot of money for like a movie studio or a record label, well, hell, they've got lawyers and connections with the LAPD, and just So it could be a mashed potato kind of crime where everything's kind of mashed together, and there's things that like Pills in the Hills party. Kid said, yeah, yeah. I've been to a lot of mansion parties. Matter of fact, the last the last years that I lived in LA, I wouldn't even go because you've already seen everything. You've already been to every kind of mansion party, and you're like, oh, the parking, this, that, and the other. There's always something crazy going on. There's always a fight. There's weird security at some of these bigger mansion parties. I went to one with a friend. It was Ice-T's mansion party, and it was a day. It was during the day, and this place was huge. And when we showed up, we saw what was going on. Like, no, 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 we left. And you had to have an invite. You had to have this like little postcard thing, and then you had to. They had a shuttle bus. I'm not kidding. So you parked off Melrose in this parking lot. People were waiting, and then they'd take groups and shuttle them back and forth. So we got off the shuttle, got in there, saw these scary security people and what was going on. We went right back into the shuttle and went back and got in our car and like, fuck this. And they were kind of laughing at us, the people and the drivers, like, oh yeah, it ain't for you, huh? And I was like, no, uh it wasn't for me. I mean, some mansion parties were cool, but some of them, man, people are like, they lay out drugs on these tables in different rooms, and people are stealing them. They're taking off their cigarette cellophane and filling it with blow or whatever. And I never was into drugs. And at the time, I would drink and smoke herb, but I would never, you know, um, uh, I just, again, I'm into a good time. But when it passes a certain line, it's just like, no, I'm not, absolutely not. And at the end there, probably the last 5 years or even 10 years I lived in LA, I would not go to a mansion party. The thrill is gone. When I first moved there, it's like, I can't wait to go to a mansion party. And I did. Went to everyone I could find, me and my friends. We'd go home and shower and dress and, oh, yeah, there we go. And then have to park some side street and walk up this and get lost. And you're with a group of people that are lost, and you can see the lights and the noise, and you're asking neighbors who are watering their lawn, like, how do you get up there? Like, well, you got to go around here and watch out for the traffic, and just, then wander down, try to find your car, again, being lost. One time I had to go through like a hill. I knew where my car was, and I'm like, man, I'm lost. I just went through like backyards and friggin' down the hill. It was stupid. But good times. In your 20s, and you're just dumb, you know. But yeah, what do you think? Comment below. I'm gonna get out of here. Do you think Charles Manson was a secret agent? Huh? See, he didn't even know. Like he'd been sheep dipped, bamboozled, and like a Manchurian candidate where they could like say a word, and he turns into some kind of like zombie killer. Who knows? Um, Comment below. But I love y'all. Be blessed. Cheers.